Shut up. Okay, let's do this.
The least dad of this crew. Yeah, I am tier 2.
Get off my lawn.
If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the Old Cranky Man YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the notification button so that you get notified every time we upload a video. Hey everybody, welcome to the Magic Dads podcast here on the Old Cranky Man YouTube channel. My name is Blake. I'm here with Stefan.
Hi,
and
how you
we
doing?
have a special guest today, the Old Cranky Man himself. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello. I am Cranky. I am the owner of OCM, and I'm excited to be here.
I invited Chris on here today because I want to talk about one of my favorite things is punts. I want to talk about epic punts. So I have a video that I want to show everybody real quick, and you will see me in it. Well, yeah, let's just watch the video. I mean, you could have given me a little bit of assistance. I was deep down in the tank. So for a little context, we played game 1 off camera. And we had to move all of our stuff onto camera to play games 2 and 3. So like for the entirety of games 2 and 3, I'm feeling very rushed. And I should not be, but I am.
You won game 2.
I'm feeling very rushed. This is actually game 3.
Yeah. So we've played through game 2. I won game 1 by reanimating your Titan of Industry. And then game 2 you won.
This is game 3. We've gone back and forth for quite some time. Now, I cannot put myself back into the headspace of what exactly I was trying to do by this right here. But I am playing a life and death, targeting a palace jailer. So I go down to 1. And if you see there on Stefan's side, there is a Renin 6 that has about 7 loyalty on it.
I've just been ticking that baby up the entire game, just like...
So I attack it, but it doesn't make it dead.
No, and I shuffled my graveyard under my library with an endurance too.
Yes, I did put an endurance into play. And the whole time, you're just letting me play.
Yeah. Yes, I am.
So
you're doing incredibly mean things to me.
If I remember correctly,
you.
watch what you do here. You're like, okay, untap, draw, kill you.
Yeah. I believe there's a small amount of celebration.
Oh, look, the cards got thrown down too.
I was like, oh,
I
believe what I said was, I cannot believe that I just let that happen.
I had a Vengevine in hand too. I had some plays that I was planning on doing. We're kind of having a post-mortem here, but yeah, I definitely, even in a casual match, if you're doing mean things to me, like
I believe what my goal with doing that was to be able to get rid of the
Stinky.
Get rid of the stinkweed imp. So yeah, my goal there, I think, was to get the stinkweed imp out of the way and then be able to attack Renin 6 down. But the whole time I was doing that, I was just completely unaware that the +1 on Ren is deal 1 damage to any target, and I'm going to 1 life to make this play happen. So
it is a -1.
Oh, -1, sure.
You get very caught up in what you're doing and what your lines are.
Yeah.
And you don't consider the onboard thing that can exist because you're just considering what's in my hand, or the thing that I've been doing with Renin 6 the entire game is just I'm gonna
go back to what I was saying before, that the entire time we were playing both of those games, I just felt very rushed.
Yeah,
I felt very rushed the whole time, and it was not really enjoying myself, and it just kind of is what it is. Okay. I want to hear Stefan's punt. Let me hear your story.
Okay, so this is sort of an interesting story because this does involve the same deck. So Dredge is a deck that is, I would say, incredibly difficult to pilot.
Absolutely.
It's very powerful. It runs some incredibly powerful cards. That's about 20% of the deck. The other 80% is very bad cards or super contextual cards. And there are a lot of deck building restrictions that you sort of have that are inherent to the deck. One of those being, if you're running Hermit Druid, you really hamstring yourself. Yeah, you can't play any basics. And that but that also allows you to run what is effectively a free 1-card combo in the
Right.
deck. So if you have no basics in your deck,
It
you
just
mill
mills your entire library.
immediately. You mill your whole library. And the way that wins is a couple of different ways. In this game, Blake is standing over my shoulder watching me play. I don't remember who my opponent was, but I have a Hermit Druid.
It's driving me crazy that I don't remember this game. Come on, get on with it.
My only creature in play, and my Narcomoeba is in the graveyard. And I go to activate my Hermit Druid, not even thinking that my Narcomoeba isn't in my deck.
Yeah.
And I mill my whole deck, and I have no additional creatures in play. I have a land I played before I activated my Hermit Druid. And the reason this is important is I have a
Bloodghast.
I have a Bloodghast in my deck that I milled over, but I already played the land.
So you couldn't get the trigger to put it back into play.
Yep, and there was and I had an unearthed creature that I could have played.
Scathe Zombies.
But the only way that there was no other way for me to get 3 creatures in play. I could only get
you needed the Bloodghast or the Narcomoeba.
Yeah. And I had neither of those because I played my land before I activated.
Yeah, I do remember that game now. I was like, why didn't you hold up the land drop until after you milled your deck?
I was very dead after that because one of the rules of Magic the Gathering is that if you ever go to draw a card and you can't, you lose the game. And with no cards in my deck, my opponent just had to pass the turn, and I was dead.
And you die in your draw set.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea what you were talking about. You were like, you were standing over my shoulder, and after I did it, you told me that I screwed it up. I guess you were just paying me back when you killed me with the Rin and 6.
Very much.
I mean, that was probably like, what, a year ago? You were brooding that entire time. You were like, the time's going to come.
Yeah.
The time's going to come when I'm going to get him.
I'm going to zap him.
I'm going to get him when he's got his guard down. Okay,
Good
Cranky,
time.
let me hear your story.
Oh man, so mine is less about like being good at this game and more just the style points of how I lost. So I was actually playing Kelsey Dixon back, and he is so it was back in like a draft, Shadows over Innistrad, and I go into it knowing that he's like a far superior limited player than myself. So I think I lose game 1 and so I'm like, whatever, I'm just gonna cheese it. Put in Triskaidekaphobia. Yeah, we're going for it because we're just gonna get the cheese. The meme is real. Well, the meme's going along, we're kind of hovering around, and then unfortunately, he basically just like set it up so I died to my own Triskaidekaphobia. Like he actually had enough damage to like ship me way past and like kill me in 2 turns, but he just like attacked with 1 dude, so I died to my own.
That is absolutely incredible.
I love that. I love the Triskaidekaphobia killing players anyway.
So I also have a really amazing Triskaidekaphobia story. So I was playing Pioneer like right when it came out. So immediately after Pioneer, when it was announced, I was like, I can play Aetherworks Marvel again. Sign me up. So I built Aetherworks Marvel, and we have, I don't know, 3 or 4 copies of Emrakul the Promised End. So Mind Slaver you in your upkeep. Basically was the idea. So I was playing against Mono Black, and they have what is that card called? Underworld Connections.
Yeah.
They have an Underworld Connections on one of their lands and a Triskaidekaphobia. Yeah, I Mind Slavered them and then killed them with their own Triskaidekaphobia. It was amazing.
I think the worst one I've ever dealt to somebody, that I'm really bad with Phage. Phage, so from Legion. So this is back in Legion's draft. I can't remember. I think she might have been worth something, so I drafted her. And someone was like, that card's terrible, you can't play it. So of course I do. I stalled the game to get it into play, right? But like it has no evasion. Except back then there was a card, I'm blanking on the name, but I think it was actually in Onslaught that said like all your creatures gain fear.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I have won with a phage against someone who told me I could never.
Oh
Limited
no!
Yeah.
In limited.
That was my biggest like salt passed on.
Ooh.
Like not really a bad beat, but like the rubbins.
Oh wow!
I like that some Magic designer somewhere was like making this card and was like, they're gonna get there the honest way or they're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I
this
hard
forcing
caster,
issue.
and then God, I want to know what that card is. It's like Scourge
That's
of the Night, maybe?
amazing.
That sounds right. Giving creatures fear is very like
Yeah, it was
Pre-modern
like terrible.
energy.
But so what I ended up doing too was dedicating. I took that card because it was in the era of like the 9-sleeve Ultra Pros.
Yeah.
Remember that era binders, right? Not.
Oh, yeah.
So I put Phage in the middle, and I slowly collected the common around it.
Oh, nice.
So whenever I'd see him, be like, "Hey, you want to trade?"
Beautiful.
Trying to murdering this man.
So
Yeah.
you know, when you're in a competitive or semi-competitive format and something like that happens to you, what do you do to recover?
I actually wrote an article that referenced how I got around this. So I used to, well, when I was younger, I'd play golf. Was my kind of metaphor. So I didn't practice. So the one time I would go out and I wasn't good, I get really, really mad. Like it was
Sure.
not enjoyable for my dad to come out and play with me. And then once I just like accepted the fact that I don't have the time or choose not to make the time to dedicate to get better, I actually played better because I just enjoyed myself.
Right. That's oh, that's good.
So
That's
I took that strategy. It was Aetherworks Marvel actually, GP Omaha.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah.
I was
I wrote
there.
an article that it's a similar scenario, but I just I didn't read any of, like I had the deck list I wanted to play,
Yep.
but I didn't like mulligan. I didn't play anything with it. I just winged it, and I ended up getting my only pro point back before it, like they got rid of all that stuff. But yeah, I went 10-5 that day. So
amazing.
Not
yeah,
bad.
that GP, yeah, that was awesome.
Amazing.
And that's such a grueling event that if you're not having fun, your body's just gonna your brain's gonna give up on itself. Like if you're miserable in 3 rounds, you're just gonna be done.
Yeah.
Even if you're winning.
I spent most of the rounds realizing I was playing the completely wrong deck, but I had fun playing it. So
Hey, man.
Like, it was very good against the Aetherworks Marvel creature and zombies, but it was not good against the Aetherwork Marvel spell, which was what I think Brad Nelson won that event with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
forgot about that. That was
just rickrolled whenever I played that version of that deck.
I love that deck.
Yeah, it's still fun.
It's like it adds this random element to doing literally the most powerful thing that you can do, and that is cast a card without paying its mana cost.
Yeah.
It adds this randomness to it that it's so thrilling.
Listen, as a former Winota player, I understand.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of randomness in that as well.
Yeah.
And the best part of it, because it was all based off the Eldrazi, right? So you had Ulamog that came in that I played one of the spells, I think it was Dispel actually, or not Dispel, the blue from Kaladesh that you could counter target activated ability or spell. So
disallow.
I could
Stifle effect, yeah.
So I would stifle the destroy, but then you're left with a 10/10, or you're like, let the counter the spell, but then you still they destroy, and yeah, it was a very, very good deck.
Right. So even if they have the disallow to counter one of the abilities of it, it still gets to attack.
Yeah.
So no matter what, they're gonna get their 3 for 1.
A 2-turn clock still good apparently.
Yeah, just mill 20. All right.
Yeah.
And take 10. Here we go.
Yeah. The 10 life very relevant.
Yeah.
But I read this tweet. I read this tweet the other day where this person was talking about they had arrived late to this tournament and they were feeling very, very rushed, and it led them to just, play rushed for basically the entire day. And I really sympathize with that because I was thinking about this story that I was going to tell where I just felt rushed, and I really think that that's all that it was. I wasn't enjoying myself. I was feeling like I was under the gun and I needed to make something happen, and really I didn't. I was basically in full control of that game if I just wouldn't have put myself in a position where you could kill me.
Yeah.
So
every game is an isolated, it's like its own isolated ecosystem. Yeah. But if you can separate each of those games from inside of themselves and just do your best at every individual game and not kind of let them bleed into each other, that's when you sort of take a step out and become a better player. Because I've heard from so many players that are just like, I had a rough night the night before. There was no way that I was enjoying myself the next day.
Yeah, sure.
Like Ross Merriam's struggle with, I think there was a escapade with him taking a bus from Richmond to PTQ.
I've heard this story before.
It was a higher level tournament, and his bus, it was a Greyhound bus, it just stopped somewhere for like 4 or 5 hours.
They had to get it, and then they had to get into a car, and the car broke down.
Oh no.
And so they called an Uber, and they got there 9 minutes before round 1 started.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard this story before.
Just brutal. And what are you going to do at that point? You might as well not play almost. But if you are the type of human that can take a moment, shake off everything.
I think he won that tournament.
Yes.
Yeah. That was the punctuation, is that he won that tournament. Yeah.
That's sort of one of the reasons Ross is one of the names that I associate with Magic right now in the competitive scene. And as much as he's done with SCG and doing commentating, his skills are always, I think, best in separating games individually and just being an astounding player.
Yeah, that seems like a really, really good technique. It's I feel like sometimes once I get in that headspace, I'm in a rush now, that's going to affect everything. And I can't recall, on this day where I let you kill me with Rin and 6. I can't recall if I felt rushed for the rest of the day. I don't think that I do, but we're not playing for any high stakes. We're not playing for anything.
No,
we're just playing games. So I don't think I felt rushed in that, but I'm just really curious how you come back from something like that. If you do that in round 1, you're like, oh. You can't blame that on you. Oh, I drew bad. Nope, sure didn't.
So with an answer to that, I always actually look at it as an educational, right?
Yeah.
Education, learning, any mistake or time costs time, money, and sometimes both, right?
Yeah.
So in that time, right, you made the mistake, but just sitting there and sit in it for a sec and say, okay, what went wrong, right? How did I get about to this? And then really learn from it, in the sense that okay, this would have been a better line if it's that you have that much time to figure it out. And really honestly, then just forgive yourself.
Yes.
And move on.
Yep.
Perfect.
Right? Because
I love it.
That beating yourself up is just gonna
you need to be okay. So if you're gonna move on from that, you're obviously here for a reason. You have some amount of self-confidence, I would imagine. You need to maintain that self-confidence if you're going to go on to continue winning.
Yeah.
Or win, because you just lost.
I think a lot of it you can also just take a step back and laugh at yourself. Enjoy the fact that you kind of were a goober for a minute.
Yep.
Because if you could acknowledge in that moment where it kind of stings that it's going to be a fun story later.
Yeah.
and kind of internalize it that way, because Magic is always going to be one of the best things about Magic is that it is a lot of human interaction. It's human to human contact where we get to sit across from a real human opponent and have a game with them and sort of experience whatever they're doing with whatever we're doing. And that's how we kind of interact with each other. And punting is almost like the slapstick comedy of that, right?
Right.
It's okay to sometimes slip on a banana peel.
Yeah.
As long as you interpret it as that moment and then go, okay, time to go on with the show.
It was more like you red turtle shelled me.
Yeah, yeah. Still very funny.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think you have to separate along that now using the red shell versus the blue shell, right? Like you
Right.
can't do anything about the blue shell,
No.
right? There's just, but like,
I could have
don't
dodged
get
it
mad
and
at that either, right? Like that's the beauty of the game, right? Like with the red shell, like, yeah, sometimes you just get dinged. Pick up your coins or get your balloons and just keep going.
You should
honestly love that.
I think you have to get Ren and 6 to be altered to be Mario Kart now.
Yeah.
That's required.
Or at least just throwing a red shell at you.
Yes.
I do like that analogy of like there's different levels of attack from an opponent, right? Like they green shell you, that's just a card off the top that wins the game, right? Like that's the lucky top deck. Yep. The red shell is like the isolated attack that maybe you had an answer for, maybe you didn't. And then the blue shell, you just go, okay, they had the nut.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Right.
You know, like sometimes people are gonna be on tears. They're gonna have their deck feed them the correct answer at every step of the way. And I'm sure that you guys have had this too, but I've played games where I've lost and lost and lost and lost because my opponent seemed to have the correct card. Like I've had so many games against people where they've turn one, factory, like Mishra's Factory, or like,
I mean, like where you go on a tear, like a losing
workshop,
where you just can't win.
Where they just have everything. And it's okay. Like that's okay for your opponent to get the nut sometimes, because that's going to come back to you eventually too.
Sure.
Like in poker, you're going to have to give some action to get some action back.
Yeah. Cat is literally licking my head right now. It feels hard, to be able to like a lot of times when something like that happens, like if it keeps happening, you start to like question your deck building skills and like, I'm just playing the wrong deck. I'm in the wrong metagame, so you maybe switch decks or try something different, and then you can kind of reset that way. But going on a losing streak is miserable.
Yep.
I think there was like 3 weeks last summer where I didn't win in a game for 3 weeks straight. And what did I do? I made a new deck.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to play something different now because this is just not doing it for me anymore.
And it doesn't even mean that deck is bad. It maybe means
I think it was pretty bad.
You need to take a step away from it too, right? Like, well, yeah, that one may have been, but there are times where like you'll be playing a deck that is very good. Like maybe it's a tier 1 deck, but you're just not getting the results because your opponent's hitting all of their sideboard cards appropriately, or you're not drawing into the action that you need. Like sometimes you watch, I mean, we saw what in the last Pro Tour, we saw Reed Duke draw through half of his deck before he got to any of his action spells in one of the final rounds. And he lost that game, but he won the match.
Yeah.
Because he accepted that like the variance of that it's fine. That man is also a machine, though.
You have to figure out a way to, forgive yourself and
I think along that too, though, it's so important to like know your pilot and your skill set within a specific deck, right?
Sure.
So that's kind of like how I assume Canadian Highlander, but modern, it really shows where you can play, let's say, like the tier 1.5 or tier 2 deck, but if you play it at an elite level, you are going to do better, more likely, because of than playing the tier 1 deck at a tier 2 level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're really rewarded for good play. So like, that's why.
And having those reps in and having the lines memorized and
knowing your bad and good matchups, knowing exactly what your plan is for each of those, and it's
right.
Yeah, experience is second to none.
Yeah,
because then you get into the mind games. That is the beauty, like the poker element of this game, where you start to bring on and create punts for your opponent, where they have you dead on board. And you're like, I mean, the whole gaming thing, is it right or wrong? Where you're like, are you done? Like, I don't like that, but that is something that's been done, right? And people will reply yes. So you do what Blake was experiencing, where you feel rushed, and when you're not in your comfort zone, that's when you start to make mistakes. Now, don't go out and ask your opponent for fun, because that's a toxic part of the game. But there are like other ways to create edges.
It's totally reasonable. Like to like if you act like you're not dead, sometimes they assume you're not dead.
Yeah.
Right? That like if you have mana up and you have nothing in, like you have got 2 cards in hand, they're both lands, they may assume that's an endurance, right? They're not going to swing in they're not going to kill you even if you're dead on board, because they don't want to lose their whole board to a 3/4 with reach that can flash in.
Play to your outs is a big
let them misplay if they're going to misplay, and just kind of hope for the best.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, we are out of time. So, Chris, Cranky, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I love being here.
And thank you to everyone watching. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.
Proud of you.
Cheers.